Lawsome by ConsultWebs. Breakthrough insights to build a thriving law firm with your host, Tanner Jones.
Hello everyone. Today on our show, we're speaking with Cara Pryor, president at James Publishing. We'll be discussing how law firms can use video marketing to appeal and to attract new clients. Now, we get a lot of questions when it comes to how law firms should use video. So we'll be focusing on some steps and practical ideas that you need to take in order to get video marketing working for you and some of the pitfalls to avoid. Cara, I'm so very happy to have you today. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Tanner. It's a pleasure.
So let's start with the why. Why does a law firm need to attract and appeal to new clients?
Well, yeah, Tanner, I talk to dozens of attorneys every week about kind of the best ways to improve their marketing results. And one question I hear over and over again is, how can I distinguish myself from the competition, right? How can I stand out from the many other attorneys in my area who may be providing similar services? And, it's true. Most of your prospective clients, they can't necessarily see much of a difference between the lawyers that they're considering hiring, right? Typically, most law firm websites look, about the same. And the solution really is to let prospective clients meet you on your website. Let them learn about you, learn about your approach, who you are as an attorney, who you are as a person, and really see how you've handled similar cases in the past. And the way to do that is video. It requires video, right? So the best way to kind of stand out is absolutely through custom video. And it's also a great way to build trust and that familiarity with your prospective clients and of course your new clients. So, Tanner, video, it really isn't kind of a nice to have anymore. It's a pretty critical piece of your overall marketing strategy.
And I would agree. I mean, we've always said first impressions matter, but if people can connect your voice with your face, it adds to that personalization even further, and we've seen that firsthand. But let's dive in a little bit more into the tactics, if you will, and so let's talk about how videos can be used specifically in legal marketing. Can you give us a breakdown maybe of different types of video marketing assets that attorneys should be considering?
Sure, I'd love to. And that's a good point because I think sometimes it can be overwhelming when attorneys think about kind of where to start. What do I talk about? Where do I go? So I like to kind of break it down in kind of a few categories of the most effective, easy to produce videos. And if you're going to create only one sort of category of video, I highly recommend that you talk about cases that you've handled in the past. So tell the stories of your past cases. It's important to sort of persuade prospects that you specifically, not the attorney down the street, but you have the knowledge and the talent to handle their specific legal matter, right? And by showing them a past case or a past kind of transaction that's similar to their own, you can imagine how compelling that would be to a prospective client. And, when I say this, really each video should cover only one case. So one past case per video ideally should unfold, over around 2 to 3 minutes max. Kind of tell the story, in chronological order as much as you can. And the larger your collection of videos covering a variety of your legal matters that you've handled in the past, in other words, describing past cases with sort of varying fact patterns, the better your odds are of kind of matching one with your prospect situation, right? The whole idea is you want your prospect to be able to come to your website and watch you talk about a situation that's very similar to the one that they're experiencing, right? So this means kind of building your collection of past cases should ideally be an ongoing effort. So I always suggest just kind of build it into your process. So ideally, you'll kind of be getting in the habit of shooting these videos every time a case concludes, at least every time a case concludes that, has a fact pattern that you haven't yet added to your past case video library. So I really think outlining those past cases, it's a really simple way. You don't have to, think too much about the content. You're just describing that case that's fresh in your mind. And then also, oftentimes I'll hear, well, maybe I'm a new practice, or, I recently opened my firm. Maybe I'm entering a new practice area, which has been pretty common during the pandemic. And maybe you don't have a lot of past cases. Well, in that case, you could use cases in the news for sure, or you could just use hypotheticals rather than actual past cases. The key is just kind of to explain what's likely to unfold with a case that you want to handle, right? And with a case that kind of matches the fact pattern that you want to handle. So it's really not an excuse, right? It's actually I know an attorney who really enjoys kind of taking cases from the news and just describing how he would handle them specifically. So in explaining kind of how you'd handle a case of that type, you definitely demonstrate your expertise, right? And you ideally are kind of addressing the biggest question that most prospects have, which is, what is the likely result in my case? That's what people want to know. So, yeah, I mean, Tanner, I don't know if you have experience with that, but I've certainly heard many attorneys who have said, I have all these great client testimonials, and those are wonderful. I mean, client testimonials are wonderful kind of social proof, but why not kind of take that a step further and kind of describe those past cases yourself, specifically a motorcycle accident or maybe a construction accident case, something that kind of niches out that topic. And I can get more specific a little later on some suggested topics, but really, if you're going to start in one area, I really suggest the past cases.
I love that. I do. I've seen it proven time and time again, not necessarily specific to video, but just the whole concept of social proof, and in illustrating your expertise in a particular area. All too often we get lost in, really just hitting on our own highlights. And from a marketing standpoint, it's all about the buyer, or the client. And as humans, we're selfish beings. It's always about us. And so the more you can cater those prior experiences around the situation, people are able to relate to that, and that's they're not really going to consider you until they know specifically that you have the answer to their needs. And that's the perfect way to do that. So I love that concept. But what about other topics? Any other types of video marketing assets beyond a case result that you would suggest?
Yeah. So along with kind of detailing past cases through video, you should also use video to sort of explain what brought you to the law, what brought you to your specialty initially. So, kind of endearing yourself to your prospects by detailing how you got into your practice area and kind of your passion for helping clients. Your prospects want to know that their case will be handled by someone who cares, right? I mean, that's kind of the bottom line. Video is such a wonderful way to showcase your personality and, what really attracted you to the law in the first place. And then one of the biggest categories is providing helpful information about, how a prospect or a new client's matter will be handled, but then answering common prospect questions. I mean, that's a really super effective, super valuable use of videos, right? Display your knowledge, display your willingness to help by offering a collection of FAQ, frequently asked question videos, which provide helpful information, build that familiarity, build that trust. I mean, think about it. Answering common prospect questions with videos, there's really, several benefits that will sort of, remove much of the burden from your plate. You won't have to verbally answer the same question as often. And prospects come to you better educated. They know what lies ahead. I mean, educated prospect makes a higher quality client. And, the prospects who contact you after viewing, these videos, they're higher quality. And it's true. The prospects, attorneys tell me all the time, after they begin kind of offering educational content, they attracted higher quality prospects. I mean, that's just how it works. And those prospects were better prepared, more willing to kind of follow the lawyer's advice, right? More likely to pay on time, more likely to refer business in the future, so it really is this snowball effect. But just keep in mind, so these videos, getting practical, getting specific, these videos address questions that are regularly asked by your prospects or your new clients. So, like the past case videos, the FAQ videos certainly demonstrate your expertise. They build that trust. And, think about it, prospects who are maybe a bit earlier in sort of the investigation process, maybe they're interviewing several attorneys. They're not quite ready to hire an attorney, but they have many questions, right? Do I have a case? What happens next? Can I handle this myself? What might go wrong? How much is this going to cost? All of those questions are super valuable for you to answer. And later, I can talk about some specific ideas for specialty specific, depending on what your practice area is, just to kind of, give you a jumping off point. But, you know better than anyone the type of questions that you get all the time, right? That's what I tell attorneys all the time. Just, sit down for a few minutes and just list out the questions that you hear all the time. Each of those questions, that can be a new video, right? And it's you should really answer similar to the past client. You should answer one question per video. This growing collection of videos on your website so that a prospect can go to your site and go directly to kind of the answer that they're looking for. Because undoubtedly, attorneys, you have a group of your website visitors, might be a rather large group of your website visitors who are coming to your site and they're just not quite ready to book that consult, maybe not quite ready to give you a call, but certainly they're looking to gather more information, looking to get their questions answered, and likely they don't know much about this, scary situation that they're going through. There's anxiety associated with it. So the more you can help, the more you can kind of be that trusting, face to kind of guide them through the process. They will remember that. And certainly, when they are ready to hire, you'll be top of mind.
That's good. That's good. And you alluded to the idea of you can get, I'll say some added benefits beyond just, having the video produced and placed on your website, for example. There's so many other side benefits that you can take advantage of. One that just came to mind around the FAQs, if you have new team members, new staff, new intake, new attorneys, it's phenomenal training material just to ensure that you have a cohesive, consistent message and how your firm is answering specific questions. So a lot of different ways to utilize that. And so let's use that as a segue to take it into the direction of different channels, different places to list these videos. Where would you suggest firms should look at first and foremost to place these videos once they've been produced?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, producing them is certainly most of the battle, but if no one's going to watch them, no one's going to see them, then what is it all for? So without just kind of dumping a whole bunch of promotional ideas on your plate, I think the primary kind of promotional channels for video, your website, of course. Your website needs videos. YouTube is the second largest search engine, right, to Google, and it's a natural home for your videos. More than likely, you're going to house your videos on YouTube anyway, the ones that you're embedding on your website. So you might as well create a YouTube channel. Emails, embedding them in really all of your emails. I mean, they should be part of your prospect nurturing sequence, assuming, that you have one, right? So video is a great way to follow up with those prospects who aren't quite ready to hire you. But again, they're looking, they're looking to get their questions answered. Rather than sending, paragraph long emails, embed a video. Videos are really great. It's proven that video increases your open and your click-through rates on your emails. Include a link in your email signature, maybe to one of your more kind of general videos. Anywhere that you can include videos and email is really great. And then, excuse me. And then, of course, social media. I mean, videos are kind of tailor-made for social media. I know not all attorneys are, heavily invested in social media, but if you have a Facebook profile for your firm, if you're even on LinkedIn for kind of networking purposes, certainly, wherever you are, share your videos on social if you happen to be on Instagram, if you happen to be, on any of the other platforms, social media is definitely, videos are perfect for social. And again, it kind of breaks up, so that you're sharing a variety of content types. You're not only sharing articles or only sharing booklets. Video really brings a nice mix to it. And when I talk about videos on your website specifically, I believe videos are more effective at kind of building trust, distinguishing yourself from the competition than anything else you can put on your website. So they're really a wonderful addition there. Again, I feel like they've kind of become a mandatory component of legal websites. And a lot of the legal websites I look at still lack video, or maybe there's one kind of spotlight above the fold video on their homepage that's really, really wonderful, but then that's it. So there's just such an opportunity, like I've been saying, to kind of grow that collection, grow your library of videos.
And that's all too often I see firms that spend an exorbitant amount of money on a brand video with no real execution strategy on getting it to market. And they spend tens of thousands of dollars and time, and after a year maybe have 10 views on that video. And so what you're suggesting is spot on in terms of, if you're going to take the time and the energy and investment in this video content, make sure it's actually being distributed and getting in front of a maximum amount of people. That's so important and often neglected. So several great suggestions there. I would like to come back to let's give our audience some specific ideas on the video content. You've alluded to this a couple different times that you wanted to touch on it, but what about actual content? Now that we have a good overview of how videos can be used to attract cases, what does the content look like for each of the types of videos you've spoken about?
Yeah. So I think we kind of pretty much covered the past case videos and the about us, what attracted me to the law. But, for these FAQ, for these frequently asked questions style videos, specifically, I can certainly offer a few examples. And like I mentioned before, use these as kind of jumping off points, because you really know best, the questions that you get all the time. As part of our marketing amplifier system, we actually do provide scripts for 7 core specialties. So even if you just want to brainstorm, I'm happy to brainstorm topics with you. And we can kind of, especially if you're maybe in a niche kind of unique practice area, I'm happy to talk about that. But let me provide some common examples. So for instance, if you're practicing in bankruptcy, perhaps one of your first frequently asked question videos could be, is my situation bad enough to file bankruptcy, right? These videos, they really kind of help you qualify and screen your prospects as well. So, you're kind of clearly defining who you can help, and while also providing value and showcasing your expertise. So continuing on, business litigation, when is a party excused from its contractual obligations? That could be a great first one. Criminal defense, can you get the evidence against me thrown out? I'm actually just reading from some of our videos. Estate planning, do I need an attorney to draft my estate plan? That's, a common question. Think about it. These are questions that prospects are Googling, right? Do I need an attorney to draft my estate plan? Let's answer that. Let's talk about that. Do you know? But here's why here's why you should hire an attorney. Family law. Should I tell my spouse I'm planning a divorce? Personal injury. How do I pay my medical bills? Social Security disability. Am I likely to qualify for benefits? So those are just some, high level. Don't overthink it. I think that's maybe the best advice is don't overthink it. Really just answer the questions that you get all the time. And, then very little editing is required too, which I know we'll probably get into, in a moment, but you don't want to, if you can kind of shoot these videos in kind of one take. I have some attorneys who like to set up in the corner of their office, they have a dedicated laptop or a dedicated system for shooting videos, so that anytime they have a chunk of time throughout the day, maybe they just have a free 30 minutes at lunch, they'll just sit down in front of that computer, hit record, open Zoom or any other, simple software program that just allows you to record your screen and answer questions. Maybe a prospect just left your office and they asked you something. You say, "Oh, you know what? I get that all the time. I need to shoot a video on that." And you simply respond and answer that question, one question per video. So I think if you could just kind of make it part of your process and chunk out that time, you'll be surprised at how quickly you can really grow an impressive collection of these videos.
That's it. And like most anything, it's just, intentionality and consistency that will ultimately lead to success in this area. There are a few things that come to mind in hearing that. One, in the suggestions you gave, which I thought were all rock solid, a lot of those questions are what I would consider pre-legal intent searchers, meaning these individuals are still in the exploration and evaluation process. They're researching and investigating their own personal situation or a loved one's situation, probably not even to the point of ready to actively search and hire a law firm, more so just looking for information. And so this is an opportunity I see as a way to kind of step ahead of competition and get in an area of information that's not nearly as crowded as in the area of people specifically looking for a bankruptcy lawyer or a business litigation attorney. And so I see that as a competitive advantage. But I also understand that if attorneys have never even stepped into the practice of doing these videos consistently, they probably have a lot more questions in their minds, even after hearing this discussion so far. So let's dive into the structure itself. I know in structuring how you present and position one's message in marketing is often one of the more important factors to think through. So can you offer our audience any best practices that attorneys would want to follow for structuring video content?
Yeah, sure, Tanner. I think this goes back to kind of providing value and showcasing your expertise. That's really kind of the overarching goal here. Start by answering the questions that you hear the most often. Keep your answers direct and practical. Use plain English, right? So, don't make things complicated. You really want your answers to be direct and practical. Like I mentioned before, answer just one question kind of with each video. So one question per video. Whether your answer takes, 1 minute or 3 minutes, just, keep it to one answer. Try to avoid sort of, wishy-washy answers, it depends answers. You can always provide sort of ranges where it's difficult to be specific, but again, stay as direct as you can. That's how you'll have the most impact with your prospects. And ideally, you'll kind of deliver some additional information in these videos with some accompanying slides, maybe, instead of merely, a talking head. If you can kind of reinforce your points with some slides, a really simple PowerPoint that maybe you're just sharing your screen and, it doesn't have to require editing, right? You don't have to, layer on the slides in post-production if you have limited resources. It can literally be, you talking in the corner while you're sharing your screen, you're displaying your slides, and then it creates a pretty nice one take valuable video. So I'd love to, these types of presentations, I really typically love to show samples because, that's where you really get the idea. So, feel free to, reach out after. I can send some to Tanner so that I can just send you some links so you can see some samples of each of these types of videos in tons of varying areas of practice. I think that will really inspire you to create your own, and you'll really get a sense of how these videos unfold and how they can actually be pretty simple.
And that's the theme I'm hearing, is that don't overthink it, as you said specifically, but keep it simple, and I think we often get inside our own heads and preventing ourselves from moving forward with the new initiative because it's new and because of the unknown. But it really doesn't take a robust strategy or production process to get this going. Just as you said, you have clients that'll just sit in a corner, in front of a desktop and shoot video. So I think that's great. It's a great way to get started, and it doesn't come with a whole lot of friction, which I always like. I would like to pivot because we've talked a little bit about, once you produce a video, where to place it, channels to place it. But still, even with that, you're largely waiting on people to find you. It's more of an organic or build it and hope that they will come strategy. So do you have any specific advice on how one could more proactively promote video content to get those videos in front of more potential clients?
That's an excellent point. And, as we said, creating that steady flow of videos is most of the work, but you still need to publish and promote them, right? So if possible, I like to suggest that, the attorney focuses on creation, focuses on actually shooting the videos. And if there's someone in your office that you can delegate kind of the posting and promotion to, that is the ideal situation. Because again, no one else can shoot the videos, right? We're showcasing you as the attorney. No one else can be that face. But the publishing and promoting work that can be maybe a bit more tedious and certainly doesn't require your specific skill set. If you can delegate that, I think that's a good first step. I mean, you're really the only one who can create the videos, but anyone, a freelancer, a staff member can publish and promote them. So again, we're talking about, of course, putting them on your website, on YouTube, in emails, in social media, but some more practical tips for kind of increasing viewership. As with books, as we know a lot about books here at James Publishing, we've been publishing legal books this is our 40th year actually in business, but as with books or even movies, the cover frequently determines whether a reader or a viewer will actually take a closer look, right? So it's important to write a headline directed at the prospective viewer's interests, right? Like we've talked about, do you have a winning case? Is your appeal likely to succeed? How to reduce the chaos in your divorce? Maybe how to restore your credit after bankruptcy. But, really that headline is important. And, keep in mind that designing an attractive cover, right? The kind of the headline included and the kind of still the screenshot that is used for for the video before it plays. All of that goes into the likelihood of it actually being watched. So create an engaging first slide if you can, design an attractive cover, use a compelling kind of benefit-oriented headline, and add supporting bullets if you can. And then kind of the other side of this is video optimization. Video optimization, I would sort of describe it as part science, part art, right? But it's really not for the novice. So we recommend you really engage an experienced freelancer or a marketing agency to handle your video optimization. But regardless of where you post your videos, attracting viewers obviously remains important. So just remember, if you are putting a little bit of kind of video search optimization behind your video effort, put your targeted keyword in the video's title. Use other relevant keywords kind of in the meta description or the subtitles. Consider providing a transcript. That can be a great way. Tanner, I know you're kind of the expert here, so I'm sure that you can answer more specific questions when it comes to kind of optimizing the video. But just know that it doesn't need like Tanner said, the kind of common theme doesn't need to be too complex, but if you just follow some simple guidelines, you'll really be able to increase your chances of higher viewership.
That's it. And I agree. I agree fully. I know paid advertising, oftentimes these platforms like any social media outlet, including YouTube, it's a pay-to-play platform with respect to advertisers. And so it's wise if you're going to invest in the time and the energy of these videos, depending on the caliber and the quality of the video, of course, it is wise to promote with paid dollars. But we're also talking about a lot of content that you can do yourself within the office. And that content is great, just as you're suggesting, to support on the website and doesn't always necessarily lend itself well to put paid promotion dollars. So it really comes down to the strategy. But for our listeners, I would love for you to recap, if you would, what is the quick blueprint of the steps? And I know you've really talked on a lot of different elements from the beginning to the end. but can you possibly give a very quick run through just to recap that process of ideation all the way to production and then ending with promotion?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, to kind of simply recap, right? Tell the stories of your past cases with video. Explain what brought you to the law, what brought you to your specialty. Start to really engage your prospects and your new clients. Provide that helpful information about how a prospect's matter will be handled, how it will unfold, and certainly answer common prospect questions, common questions you get from new clients. Then post these videos on your website, include them in your emails, create a YouTube channel, post them on social media if you're active there. You will see a noticeable shift in your brand awareness. You absolutely will. And in the end, your conversion rate, you will convert a higher number of your prospects into high quality paying clients if you're allowing them to meet you before they actually do in person.
That's good. I'm curious, what's one question that you would have asked yourself that I didn't regarding video?
Well, I think we really covered the gamut. The only thing I can think of is that I didn't really touch too much on is really using video to kind of reduce calls from unqualified leads, right? So that's another really huge benefit of kind of teaching prospects to evaluate their legal situation the same way that you would evaluate them, right? I think that's time well spent. Videos are really good for that task. You can use videos, of course, to describe who you've represented in the past, and then to kind of briefly explain maybe those minimum thresholds required for you to accept a case. Don't be afraid. You don't want to help everyone all the time. I mean, I don't mean to sound harsh, but, I talk to attorneys all the time that are just fielding high volume a high volume lead flow, and many of them are unqualified. So the screening process is so critical. Video is a great step kind of in that process. And the minimum thresholds, they'll convey that you are selective in who you represent, and that's a good thing. That exclusivity will definitely increase the desire of your services. So really, use video to describe who you can help, who you've helped in the past, and it will help you attract the type of client that you want to attract.
Thank you so much for sharing all that wisdom. I always enjoy our conversations. For our listeners who are interested in contacting you, what's the best way they can reach out?
Oh yeah, thanks, Tanner. So, and it's always a pleasure. It was a great time. So, though we've pretty clearly laid out a video roadmap for you during this discussion, I hope that you feel empowered to kind of, do this on your own. We do offer a done-for-you solution. Our Marketing Amplifier program includes monthly custom videos in all the areas that we talked about today. Plus, we collect video testimonials from your past clients. So if you are interested in getting a little bit of help, or if you just want to talk about this stuff, I love talking about marketing and videos. So to learn more about our program, you can visit jamesamplifier.com, or you can actually reach me directly at kprior, KPRIOR, at jamespublishing.com. And I'd be happy to send you some samples, some video samples that we discussed today, really help you on your journey.
Lawsome by ConsultWebs. Breakthrough insights to build a thriving law firm with your host, Tanner Jones.